Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Quinn, and this is Q's Book Reviews. It's sadly been a very long time since I last posted, and I'm sorry for that. I just got very busy with life, and you know how it is. But if you're with me again, if you're returning, I really appreciate that, and I'm excited to be back making videos for however long I can keep it up. Today I'm just going to be talking through some more books that I am hoping to read in the near future. This is kind of a follow-up to a video I made almost a year ago now, which is pretty crazy, talking about books that made me excited to read. And just going back to that video, I think I had something like 11 books on there. Some of those were authors as well, so a little bit more. And I actually managed to read 6 of those, so more than half of those. Last year I ended up finishing Mrs. Dalloway, Ulysses, Some of Faulkner, 100 Years of Solitude, let's see what else. Libra and The Secret History. And if you're curious about the ones that I didn't get to, but I still hope to in the near future sometime, I'll leave the other video where I talked about them linked. So about half a dozen books here that I'm just going to briefly talk about, explain why I'm interested in them, and maybe get you interested as well. Starting off, I guess we'll follow up on the Pynchon train. Previously, the only book I was missing by him was Inherent Vice. And I gave up finally my hopes of finding this used in a bookstore. That's really the way I like to buy books, but I just never found this one. I found all of his other books used at a bookstore except this one, which is one of the ones I'm most excited to read. So that felt kind of bad, and I finally just bit the bullet and ordered it online. Thomas Pynchon is, of course, a rather infamous postmodern writer, and I finally finished Gravity's Rainbow by him last year, which is a really crazy book. I have certainly not finalized my thoughts on that book yet. I'll need to read it a whole bunch more, at least once, to collect my thoughts a bit better. This one I've heard is much less convoluted than Gravity's Rainbow, but still like one of his best works, even though it's pretty recent by him, and I know some of his more recent works are a little less liked, but regardless, it's pretty short, and I think I can knock it out pretty quickly, so I'm very anxious to read it. Basically, all I know about this book is it's set in 60s LA, and it's got something to do with like a police dude or a private detective or something like that. And of course, it's going to have a whole bunch of Pynchonian moments in it, and yeah, it should be great. Then a book which I actually got quite a while ago, this is Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is really like the vampire story that started all vampire stories, though obviously there were a whole bunch more before this one. This is just the one that got the most famous. This is a great edition. I'm in love with these editions here. But I actually got this before the fall started and meant to read it like in October as like a spooky read, and then just never got around to it. So even though I really want to read this at some point, I'm probably going to end up waiting until next fall to actually get to it. So it will be a while, but it's definitely high on my list. This one I just picked up recently, and it's a cool library copy of Caligula and 3 Other Plays by Albert Camus. He's a figure which, if you've seen my other video on him, you'll know I have a lot of appreciation for him, but also a lot of conflicting feelings. I disagree pretty heavily with his politics, and he just has a very weird outlook on the world sometimes, though I do really enjoy and agree with his philosophy of absurdism, so kind of strange. But this is really one of the last pieces of fiction by him that I have yet to read. I have more essays by him that I could get to, but these are 3 plays by him, or I guess actually 4 plays by him, which I have heard good things about, and so I'm definitely excited to try them out for myself. Although now that I'm reading the inside blurb about these, I have a feeling that I may not enjoy them since they seem to relate to his politics. I'll read them off for you and we'll see what you think. This volume is the first complete publication in English of Albert Camus' major work as a playwright before The Possessed. All 4 plays are the superb stage pieces one would expect of a versatile man of the theater. Camus was an actor, director, and adapter as well as a playwright, and each testifies to the intense and lucid concern with moral problems characteristic of his more familiar fiction and essays. These plays are not, however, mere dramatizations of ideas, but theater with all its stunning effects and immediacy. Caligula, a tragedy in 4 acts, illustrates the theme that one cannot be free at the expense of others. The Misunderstanding, first published in English as Cross Purpose, is a brief piece about a son who returns to his homeland after many years, only to be murdered for his money by his mother and sister, do not recognize him. State of Siege is in no sense an adaptation of Camus' novel The Plague, although it deals with a similar situation. It's unabashedly allegorical and poetic, experimental, akin in its structure to the medieval religious drama. The Just Assassins is more classical in form. It deals with the problem of whether murder is justified in the service of a lofty ideal. So definitely interesting sounding, but we'll see how I get along with these. And this is a cool copy of The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, which my brother got me for Christmas, which I very much appreciate. This is a book which he really enjoyed, and it's written by a rather strange figure, Yukio Mishima, who is very much aligned with the fascist movement in Japan. Even though either openly or maybe he was closeted, he was a gay man, so that is very weird, maybe contradictory. And I think he writes about like a lot of like sexual tension in his book, so I'm interested to see how it surfaces in this. I'll read the blurb for this one as well. 13-year-old Noburo is a member of a gang of highly philosophical teenage boys who reject the tenets of the adult world. To them, adult life is illusory, hypocritical, and sentimental. When Noburo's widowed mother is romanced by Ryuji, a sailor, Noburo is thrilled. He idolizes this rugged man of the sea as a hero, but his admiration soon turns to hatred as Ryuji forsakes life aboard the ship for marriage, rejecting everything Noburo holds sacred. Upset and appalled, he and his friends respond to this apparent betrayal with a terrible ferocity. So I think this one's going to be quite a trip. I've heard like that's kind of a wild story, and I'm very interested to see what it's like. Next, I'll talk about a book that I don't actually have a copy of yet, though I'm tempted to buy it every time I see it in a store, and that is If on a Winter's Night, A Traveler by Italo Calvino. This is I think, pretty famous work of postmodern fiction, very meta. I think it's like some odd amount of separate short stories within the book, but then there's like a narrator who like takes you out of the story to like explain things as they're happening. It sounds very trippy. And just something that I would really, really enjoy. So I think when I read it, it's going to be an instant favorite of mine. So once I get my hands on the book, I will certainly be reading it very soon after. Another author that I'm very interested to start perusing his works is China Mieville, or maybe Mieville something. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his last name. But he is often described as like writing weird fiction or something like that. So very like surreal. I am not quite sure where his stories go, so I want to read one and find out what it's all about. This one is The City in the City, which I think is one of his more well-known ones. Let's see. When a murdered woman is found in the city of Béziers, somewhere at the edge of Europe, it looks to be a routine case for Inspector Tador Borlu of the Extreme Crime Squad. To investigate, Borlu must travel from the decaying Béziers to its equal, rival, and intimate neighbor, the vibrant city of Okoma. But this is a border crossing like no other, a journey as psychic as it is physical, a seeing of the unseen. With Okoman detective Kusim Dat, Borlu is enmeshed in a sordid underworld of nationalists intent on destroying the neighboring city, and unificationists who dream of dissolving the two into one. As the detectives uncover the dead woman's secrets, they begin to suspect a truth that could cost them more than their lives. What stands against them are murderous powers in Béziers and in Okoma, and most terrifying of all, that which lies between the two cities. So it sounds actually very political, which seems very interesting. I think if I enjoy this book, this author has the potential of becoming one of my new favorites, and I think he's still writing, which is good because I don't enjoy enough authors who are still alive and still writing things, so it'd be nice if I enjoy his works. And the last one I have is American Pastoral by Philip Roth. I think he's another pretty famous author here. This is the one that most caught my attention. I'll read the back here. Here's Philip Roth's masterpiece, an elegy for the American century's promise of prosperity, civic order, and domestic bliss. Roth's protagonist is Swede Lvov, a legendary athlete at his Newark High School who grows up in the booming post-war years to marry a former Miss New Jersey, inherit his father's glove factory, and move into a stone house in the idyllic hamlet of Old Rimrock. And then one day, in 1968, Swede's beautiful American luck deserts him. For Swede's adored daughter, Mary, has grown from a loving, quick-witted girl into a sullen, fanatical teenager, a teenager capable of an outlandishly savage act of political terrorism. And overnight, Swede is wrenched out of the longed-for American Pastoral and into the indigenous American Berserk. Compulsively readable, propelled by sorrow, rage, and a deep compassion for its characters, American Pastoral gives us Philip Roth at the height of his powers. So I'm not quite sure what to expect with this one. Just like at first glance, it really reminds me of something Don DeLillo would write, particularly like White Noise, which is one of my favorites. And then with the political terrorism, sounds a bit like Mao 2, which I have not read yet. So I'm interested to see if this is more like postmodern or if it's more sort of just like straight up fiction, where it's gonna lie within that sort of spectrum there. But yeah, I anticipate myself really liking this one, or maybe hating it. We'll see what it's like. Those are all the books I have on me right now. Of course, there are a million other books that I have, in my TBR that I want to get to, and maybe I'll talk about those someday. But these are the ones that, I anticipate getting to in the pretty near future. I'm finally finishing up some big books right now, and then I have a few more that I'm gonna read immediately next. But after those are through, I think these are probably the half dozen or so books that I will be reading in the next few months. Of course, along with the other books that I mentioned in my other video about books that I'm excited to read. Of course, if you have any suggestions for me about books that either you've read or heard about that you think I would like, I'd love to hear those. I'd also just like to know how you've been doing. It's been a while since I last made a video, so I hope you're all keeping well. And let me know if there's any good books that you've read recently. Again, I am thinking that I'll be back for a little bit longer now. I think I should be able to post some videos. Maybe not as frequently as I was posting, but definitely more so than no videos in the last 6 months or whatever. Going off of that, I think the next video I make, which I hope to have out soon, is just kind of going over my thoughts about this channel, how I'm going to handle it moving forwards, and just so I can give you a perspective into what I want to do with the channel, and maybe what to expect going forwards. I'm always open to any suggestions you might have for videos that you'd be interested in seeing from me, so please just let me know, and otherwise have a good one. Bye-bye.